Good morning. We're going to talk about your parental rights when it comes to special education as an education parent. You have to understand your rights and responsibilities of the parent. You have a right to obtain your child's records and make sure that what's in there is correct. You have the right to look at your child's educational file. They have one. Ask for it. I would. At least once a year, or by the end of an elementary school career or the end of a middle school career, I would ask for your child's records. You would be surprised what you have found in there. Everybody should request a copy of their child's educational record. You have a right to get any information that's in there, correct it if it's wrong. You have a right to have your child evaluated fully and completely by the school. They want to put your child in special education, or you feel they need to be in special education. They have an obligation, the school does, at their expense to evaluate your child to the best of their abilities with the test that they feel is appropriate according to the child's age, usually grade level. Your child's information needs to stay confidential. The records are private. Only a certain amount of people are allowed to see them. School personnel, school psychologists, and you. No one else can see them without your permission. They need to ask you for permission. Your child has the right to be taught in the least restrictive environment. This is a very important right, rule, and procedure that would take up a whole video in itself. It's the most misunderstood rule of special education. I will briefly touch on it now. You have the right to have your child taught in the same classroom as peers that are not disabled, that are not in special education. If your child is dyslexic, he should be, or she should be, in the classroom with other children who are not dyslexic. They also have to be taught at the same school that they would go to if they are not disabled. My neighborhood elementary school was Sugar Hill Elementary. That was the school my kids went to. They both were disabled. They have learning disabilities. That's the school that they went to. The school district and personnel must make accommodations and modifications so that your child can successfully be within the general education classroom. Removal is not allowed. The teacher cannot come to you and say, he needs more accommodations than his peer, Joe Smo over here, therefore he can't be in here. Only are they allowed to put your child in a separate class, a separate school, or of a more restrictive environment if they have used all the accommodations, modifications, and support services, and your child is still not successful. Then they're allowed to do so. Only then. They must make every effort to keep him in the least restrictive environment. Ideally, that is always a general education classroom. Your child stays there, supports come in. Whether it be a resource teacher that comes in every day, every other day, once a week. There is some exceptions to that, and that is speech therapy, where your child will go to a speech therapist within the school for a certain amount of days. Or an occupational therapist sometimes can come into the school to help your child write and stuff like that. But we must always try to keep our child in a general education classroom and let him participate in lunch, recess, PE, music, art, booster clubs, after school activities, clubs, whatever, to the fullest extent possible, because it helps him not feel isolated, and they learn off of each other. It can also help a non-disabled child feel empathy of what it's like for a disabled child, and vice versa. Independent evaluations. You have a right to get your child evaluated independently, and the school has to pay for it. You have to write them a letter saying that you want an independent evaluation. You could always choose to pay for it out of pocket. I would strongly recommend that you do it this way, because they will give you a list of doctors or psychologists, usually that's psychologists or psychiatrists, that they recommend. Again, they work hand in hand with the school system. So if you disagree with the evaluation that the school did and you want to get a second opinion, which is certainly within your right, I would pick one myself and pay for it out of pocket. Just a suggestion. You must be notified of when there's going to be a meeting. You must be notified of your parental rights. It's usually a book, but you can go online and Google it, but they have to, by law, present you with a little book pamphlet. You must be invited to attend an IEP meeting. If you can't attend an IEP meeting, then they need to reschedule it so when you can. They need to make it at a time and a location that is around your schedule and not theirs. So if you work and you have to take time off, they need to give you enough time to do that. Don't you worry about accommodating a meeting around them, because schools have substitute teachers that can come in and it'll be just fine. And the notice of the meeting must come in the language that you speak. So if you speak Spanish, it has to come into Spanish. You need Braille, that's your right. You have a right, if you're a surrogate parent, you have rights to be treated as an equal and still a valid member of the IEP meeting. Same thing goes with an adoptive parent, same rights. You have a right to complain, you have a right to have mediation, and you have a right to have hearing. We're not all perfect. The school's not all perfect. Somebody eventually down the road is either going to bump heads or make a mistake, or something's going to happen. And you have a right to be heard and get it fixed. I will tell you that usually it doesn't make it that far, because the last thing the school wants to do is hire a lawyer and be dragged into court. That's the last thing you want to be done to. So they will do whatever they can to try to keep it from getting to that point. But you certainly have that right. You have a right to consent. They cannot put your child anywhere unless you give them permission to do so. They can't evaluate your child without your permission. They can't provide any services without your permission, not even speech, occupational, nothing. They need your permission. If you don't get it, they can't do it. So you have that control and you have that power ultimately to say yes or to say no. If you don't sign the IEP, it doesn't get implemented. Now, that only works, I will tell you, further along you get. I've been in the special education system since my kids were in kindergarten, so if I would have an IEP meeting today and I didn't agree with what was written, the previous year's IEP would still stay in effect, and I could do what they call a freeze or a stop, and they have to follow the previous year's rule. It's an IEP. Children get special discipline procedures and rights when they're in special ed. Then a non-general education student. Certain things, no, are not tolerated. Drugs, alcohol, weapons, that just goes for everybody. But they have to make sure that your child still receives the services. So if they're kicked out of school, that can't happen. You have a right to have your child placed in private school at the school system's dime, believe it or not. They have what they call an SBT 10 scholarship. The more longer that your child is in special ed, the more money they get. And it's used to offset the cost of a private school. If your child is in a public school and it's failing, it's a charter school, it's going to close, or he needs a more restrictive environment than what a regular public school has to offer, and they can't find any other school within that district, for me, it's Gwinnett County, then a private school might be the best choice or option, and the school will have to pay for it. You will have to transport your kid back and forth, but the school will pay for it. Context. When you have concerns about your child's education, it is important to tell the school principal or the special education director. If you need further help, you can contact Parent to Parent of Georgia. I personally have never had great success with those people. You may also contact the Division of Special Education Services and Supports, or go on the Georgia Department of Education's website to get a bunch of useful information. You might want to consider hiring an advocate to go to IEP meetings for you. My job, or not my job, but what I'm trying to accomplish with these videos is to teach you how to be your own advocate for your child at these meetings. Thank you.